Ready to dive into some, some fiery prophecy.
Fire and brimstone, that's Zephaniah for you.
Maybe not a household name like, say, Isaiah or Jeremiah, but
Oh, he's got a message that, a message that still resonates today.
big time.
Hmm.
And we're going to unpack why. We're talking excerpts from the Book of Zephaniah. Get ready for some intense imagery and some surprising relevance to the world we live in.
What's really interesting is that right off the bat, Zephaniah lays out his lineage. He's the son of Cushi, and you can trace his family all the way back to King Hezekiah.
Okay, so we're not talking about some random guy shouting on a street corner. This is someone with potential royal connections.
Exactly, and that adds a whole other layer to his message, doesn't it? It's like he's speaking truth to power, but from within the system.
And he's prophesying during the reign of King Josiah, a time of religious reform, but also, still tons of idolatry going on. It's like this weird mix of change and clinging to the old ways.
And that tension, that push and pull, it sets the stage for Zephaniah's central theme, the day of the Lord. But hold on, it's not the kind of celebration you might expect.
Yeah, this is where the fire and brimstone part comes in. We're talking divine judgment, reckoning, the whole shebang.
And Zephaniah doesn't hold back on the imagery either. Blood poured out like dirt, flesh scattered like manure.
It's intense,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not just random, is it?
Yeah.
Zephaniah seems to have very specific targets for his pronouncements.
Oh, absolutely. He's calling out hypocrisy left and right. Take, for instance, those worshiping on rooftops. What do you make of that?
It's a little cryptic, right?
Huh?
Why rooftops?
It could be a reference to astral worship. Pretty popular back then in the ancient Near East.
So instead of temples, they're like holding rituals under the open sky, trying to connect with the sun, moon, stars, the whole cosmic deal.
Right. But for Zephaniah, this is a major no-no. A deviation from the worship of the one true God.
And he's also got some strong words for those who try to have it both ways, swearing allegiance to the Lord, but also, making oaths to other gods.
Trying to play both sides. Maybe they thought they could appease everyone, but to Zephaniah, it was a sign of divided loyalty.
A watering down of true faith. And then there's that line about people leaping over the threshold. I gotta admit, that one's kind of weird.
Some scholars think it's connected to Philistine rituals.
Interesting. So we're seeing cultural blending here.
Mm-hmm.
But for Zephaniah, it's not a good thing. He sees it as a threat.
A threat to Judah's identity, both religiously and culturally. And, it wasn't just about specific rituals or foreign influences.
There's a deeper issue at play here, right?
He talks about people saying things like, the Lord neither rewards nor punishes. It's like they've become complacent, apathetic.
They've lost that sense of awe, that understanding of God's power. And maybe that complacency bled into other areas of life, too.
Absolutely. It's like a spiritual apathy infecting their social fabric. Remember how he mentions foreign styles of clothing in the royal court?
Yeah, he's not happy about that.
It wasn't just a fashion critique. It was a symbol of cultural assimilation. And alongside that, he condemns violence and deceit.
He talks about houses filled with ill-gotten gains. It's a pretty clear indictment of social injustice. So we're talking about a society that's losing its way on multiple fronts, morally, spiritually, culturally. And it's not just the elite either, right? He even calls out those merchants and money counters in the marketplace.
Oh, yeah, those guys don't get a pass. He's saying that even the economic system is corrupted, built on greed and exploitation.
So it's a pretty bleak picture. But here's the thing. Amidst all this doom and gloom, there's a glimmer of hope.
There's always hope. Zephaniah isn't just about judgment, it's about repentance, about a chance to turn things around.
Okay, so it's not all fire and brimstone then. There's a way to avoid this impending doom.
Absolutely. Zephaniah calls for repentance, especially for the humble people of the land. He's urging them to seek the Lord's favor.
I like that he specifically mentions the humble. It's like he's saying that real change starts with humility, with recognizing our own need for something greater than ourselves.
And he doesn't leave them with vague platitudes either. He gets specific, telling them to strive to do what is right, to strive to be humble.
That's where it gets really interesting, because it wasn't just about internal piety. It was about how they lived their lives, how they treated each other, how they structured their society. And that's what we're going to dive into next. Okay, so we've seen how Zephaniah takes Judah to task, but he doesn't stop there, does he? It's like he widens the lens to encompass the whole region, even the world.
It's a global reckoning, not just a local one. God's justice, it's not bound by borders.
It's like he's saying, listen up, everyone. This isn't just a Judah problem. But let's focus on one group that really gets Zephaniah's attention. The Philistines. Why do you think that is?
Well, the Philistines and Judah, they go way back. Centuries of conflict, tension, fighting over land, you name it.
So when Zephaniah speaks about judgment, it's not just some abstract concept. It's rooted in this very real, very messy history.
He's speaking to their shared past, but his words, they have implications that go far beyond that specific time and place. It's a cautionary tale, you could say, about what happens when you turn away from God and embrace violence and oppression.
And he really gets into the specifics, doesn't he? Talking about their cities, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, all falling into ruin.
He even describes the seacoast becoming pasture land. Imagine that, a complete reversal, where once there were bustling ports and cities, now just flocks and herds grazing peacefully.
It's like nature reclaiming what was lost. It's a powerful image.
The impermanence of human empires, no matter how mighty they seem, ultimately they are subject to a higher authority.
And it's not just the Philistines, right? Moab and Ammon get thrown under the bus too, compared to Sodom and Gomorrah, no less.
Yeah, those are fighting words.
Huh.
Sodom and Gomorrah, legendary for their wickedness. Zephaniah is making a point.
He's saying you guys are on that level of messed up. It's like God's justice. It's universal. It doesn't discriminate.
Doesn't matter how powerful or prestigious you are, if you stray from God's principles, there will be consequences.
And then he goes on to talk about Assyria and their capital, Nineveh. That was like the superpower of the day. But even they're not exempt.
Nineveh, reduced to a barren wasteland, it's like he's saying, nobody gets a free pass.
And to really hammer home that point, he even brings up Ethiopia, a land far to the south. It's like he's drawing a circle around the entire known world.
Global accountability, that's the message here. All nations judged according to their actions, how they've lived, how they've treated others, how they've honored or dishonored God.
So there's this theme of judgment running through all of these pronouncements, but there's also that glimmer of hope, that possibility of redemption that we talked about earlier.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a thread woven through the entire tapestry of his message. Even in the midst of judgment, there's a promise of something better.
He talks about a time when all nations will turn to the Lord, offering acceptable praise, worshiping together in unity. It's a powerful image.
A vision of global peace and harmony. Nations setting aside their differences, recognizing their common humanity, their shared dependence on the one true God.
It's a pretty radical idea, even today.
Right.
This notion of overcoming those age-old rivalries, those deep-seated divisions.
And it's a vision that continues to challenge us, doesn't it? To look beyond our narrow tribal loyalties and work towards a more just and peaceful world.
It's a future worth striving for, even if it seems far off at times. But how do we even begin to bridge those divides, to overcome centuries of conflict and mistrust?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think Zephaniah offers us some clues, some guideposts along the way.
He reminds us that true peace and reconciliation, they don't come from military might or political maneuvering. It's about a change of heart, about turning away from the things that divide us: greed, pride, idolatry, violence.
And embracing those things that unite us. Love, compassion, justice, a shared reverence for something greater than ourselves.
It's about transforming not just our individual lives, but also the systems and structures of our society.
Yeah. Do our political systems, our economic policies, do they reflect those values, or are they perpetuating the very things that Zephaniah condemned?
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Ha.
It's not just about personal piety. It's about engaging with the world around us, working for change, holding those in power accountable.
It's about translating those lofty ideals into concrete actions. But that can feel overwhelming at times, can it? Like, what can one person really do in the face of such massive problems?
I think that's where the humility Zephaniah talks about comes in. It's about recognizing our own limitations, seeking guidance, and taking those small, faithful steps in the right direction.
Even if we don't see the immediate results, those small acts of kindness, those courageous stands for justice, those voices raised against oppression, they all contribute to something larger than ourselves. It's like a ripple effect.
We may not single-handedly solve the world's problems, but we can be part of the solution. We can be agents of healing and restoration. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful and hopeful messages of Zephaniah.
It's a message that speaks to that deep human longing for a world where justice and peace prevail, where all creation flourishes in harmony. And it's a message that, even thousands of years later, continues to inspire and challenge us to work towards that vision.
Okay, so we've covered judgment, we've covered repentance, but now I really want to dig into this idea of hope that Zephaniah keeps well, weaving into his message. It's like even when he's describing these really intense scenarios, he always leaves this little, this opening for something better.
It's true. He never completely shuts the door on the possibility of, of something new emerging from the ashes.
Like even in the midst of all that fire and brimstone, there's this spark of, well, of renewal.
Take his description of Nineveh, for example. He talks about it becoming this desolate wasteland, owls nesting in the abandoned buildings. It's a haunting image for sure, but there's also this sense of nature reclaiming what humans have, what humans have destroyed.
Right, it's like those post-apocalyptic movies where the vines start growing over the skyscrapers and the animals start roaming the streets. But in Zephaniah's vision, it's not just decay, it's like this cycle of destruction and rebirth.
Exactly. Like even when human civilizations crumble, life finds a way.
And that connects to his vision of a purified future for Jerusalem, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just about punishment. It's about transformation, about refining, stripping away the corruption and making way for something, something beautiful and new.
So it's like a controlled burn in a forest. You have to clear out the dead wood to make room for new growth.
And that's where this remnant of humble and meek people comes in. The ones who inherit this restored Jerusalem.
Once we get to experience this new beginning.
He describes them as those who seek the Lord, who walk humbly, do what is right. They're the ones who have turned away from the corruption and hypocrisy and embraced a simpler, more authentic way of life.
It's a good reminder that real change starts with individual transformation.
With each of us taking responsibility for our own actions and aligning our lives with God's will. And that individual transformation, it ripples outward. It shapes the structures and systems of society.
So we're not just talking about individual piety here. It's about creating a just and righteous society, a place where the vulnerable are protected, where peace flourishes.
It's a beautiful vision, but it also begs the question, how do we get there? How do we go from the broken reality we see around us to this utopian ideal?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we bridge that gap?
I think it starts with asking ourselves some hard questions. What does it mean to seek the Lord in our own time and place? What does it look like to do what is right in the midst of, the complexities of modern life?
And it's not just about our personal lives. It's about looking at the systems and structures of our society.
Our political systems, economic policies, social institutions, are they reflecting those values of justice and compassion? Or are they perpetuating the very things that Zephaniah was condemning?
It can feel a little overwhelming, to be honest. Like, what can one person really do to change all that?
That's where the humility comes in. It's not about having all the answers or single-handedly fixing everything. It's about recognizing our own limitations, seeking guidance, and taking those small, faithful steps in the right direction.
It's about those ripples you mentioned earlier. Each act of kindness, each stand for justice, each voice raised against oppression, it all adds up.
It all contributes to something larger than ourselves.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in this work.
We're part of something bigger. And even when things seem dark, even when the odds seem stacked against us, we can hold on to that hope, hold on to that vision of a better world.
And I think that's what makes Zephaniah's message so enduring, so powerful. It speaks to that deep longing we all have for a world where justice and righteousness prevail, where peace reigns, and where all creation flourishes.
It's a vision worth fighting for, a vision that reminds us that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, God is still at work.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Zephaniah, I want to leave you with this. How does his message resonate with your own life? Where do you see those glimmers of hope breaking through, and what steps can you take, however small, to be a part of that transformation?
Keep seeking, keep questioning, keep diving deep, and remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you found it insightful, challenging, and, well, maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.